Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the part of the world you are listening to me from. Welcome to another lesson on Bed Series Biology Explain This. I still remain your biology tutor, your friend Peter Sapiodun, and we are beginning a lesson, or let's say a series of lessons on immunity. I said this series because it's going to take us like 4 or 5 lessons because we aren't going to be rushing it. Okay, they are very crucial things that we'll be discussing. This topic is central to your A-level students, Cambridge, AQA, any advanced program you're preparing for. And so let's come along and let's enjoy this topic together. Remember, you can get in touch with me, send your questions, your comments, and things like that. If you want us to have online tutoring, I can use any medium to relate. No distance, no distance is too far, and no time is unconducive. We can find a convenient time for both of us. And so when it comes to your success, nothing should be difficult to spare. And so let's go on this journey and let's learn together. Like we always do, let's first off look at our learning objectives. Okay, now by the end of this lesson you will be able to define what an infection is, and also be able to define immune response, and be able to define and describe in context and in content immune system, and of course be able to explain the scope of an immune response, and be able to describe the components of an immune system, and at the end of it all be able to apply appropriately all you will have learned in exam situations. And so you should be able to do all of this with confidence and boldness, preparing for your examination. So let's go deeper into this topic and be able to understand in more details. Now let's try to look at the background to our lesson. Okay, now we need to make a distinction between an immune response and immunity. They're often confused by candidates. Okay, you attain immunity if you have an effective and efficient immune response. Okay, if the body was invaded by pathogens or anything that is harmful or toxic, if the immune system was able to respond appropriately and effectively, the body attains immunity. So if you are immune, you are protected against certain things that your immune system was able to respond to appropriately and timely. It's just like somebody else who attained diplomatic immunity, or because you're a politician, you are immune to some parts of the law. You did something before you acquire that immunity. So if you have diplomatic immunity, you must have been appointed by your state or your nation. It's the same thing if you any kind of immunity is attained because something was done. And so immune response talks about the immune system having done something efficiently and effectively to make sure that the body is not protected against what the immune system responded to. And so like we did say under our homeostasis lesson 2, please go and watch that video if you have not. And in that video we discussed the fact that all kinds of diseases, disorders, and malfunction and dysfunction, they can be traced to a breakdown of homeostatic principles. Homeostasis talks about the maintenance of a steady internal environment, that interstitial fluid that we call it, that fluid that bathes all the cells. What is the condition of that fluid? If something goes wrong, that is when there's a disease condition, because the cells are beginning to be affected adversely. So all kinds of diseases can be traced to a breakdown of the homeostatic process. Remember, homeostasis occurs by negative feedback, mainly, of course, to a smaller extent, positive feedback. But when you have negative feedback, you are negating or counteracting or opposing what has deviated from the norm. So there's a health status of the person. There's now a deviation from that health status. And let's begin to look at something that is central to what we want to be discussing, and that's an infection. Okay. Now, there's also a need to differentiate between or make a distinction between infection and disease. Now, these are two extremes. Infection is simply the presence of the microbe, the pathogen in the body of a host. Okay, there's virtually any human that is not infected with something. Okay, and then infection does not mean you are diseased. Okay, between infection and disease, there is this period called incubation period, the period when the pathogen begins to learn how to evade the immune system, how to multiply rapidly, and how to compete the cells of the immune system. So when you're infected, it means that the microorganism has found its way one way or the other, is been able to enter. But having entered, the immune system swings into action and ensure that that microorganism is kept at bay. It does not have the upper hand. So there's always an ensuing battle between your immune system and the microorganism. And so usually, if you look at nature, our body is covered with the skin. Okay, but the skin has openings, orifices. You've got the nasal for you to breathe and respire. You've got the visual for you to see. You've got the auditory for you to hear. You've got the sexual orifices for reproduction. Okay, what you refer to as urinogenital. All those things, those are compromises that we have. So microorganisms exploit, okay, these openings to infect us. Of course, there are some that can exactly enter through the skin. Okay, there's some filarial worms do that. They penetrate through the skin. They don't need to enter through any opening, just through the skin directly. And so usually you've got pathogens that you can refer to as extracellular because they stay outside the cell. When they infect the tissue or the organ, they don't have to bother about entering a cell of that tissue. They just multiply in that extracellular fluid, that new fluid that is rich in sugar, oxygen, food, water. That's where they thrive, and from there they affect the cells of that tissue or organ. But there are some that are daring. Intracellular viruses are basically intracellular. HIV, Ebola, and then COVID-19. These are viruses. They enter into cells. So you refer to them as intracellular pathogens, and they are more deadly because they are hidden by the host cell's antigen. Still on infection, still on the issue of infection. Now, intracellular pathogens, like I said in the previous lesson, viruses and some other kind of bacteria, they are intracellular. Now, they destabilize. I mean, once they enter, just like an invader entering your home, searching your wardrobes and just turning stuff upside down because he or she has gained entrance, it's possible that you have an extracellular organism, okay? That pathogen stays outside and then it begins to shoot. It's not entering the house, but the gunshot being fired, you can have a stray bullet that eats somebody despite your doors closed and everything else. You can have stray bullets eating somebody else and injuring that person. So you can see an invader outside shooting gun or firing bullet as an extracellular organism, and the one that is able to enter the house, begin to turn every wardrobe upside down, searching everywhere for stuff, and look at that as an intracellular, okay, organism or pathogen. And still on infection, whether the pathogen is intracellular or extracellular, the idea is that they will destabilize the body's metabolism. That's the truth. Okay, the whole idea of an infection is to enter a place, thrive, grow, reproduce, and just keep enjoying. So nature has ensured that all organisms will survive and spread and reproduce. So you and I are part of the scheme of life. You and I also eat, of course. You eat, you drink, you kill fish, you kill stuff to eat, you kill chicken, you kill turkey. All of us survive. So if you're looking at microorganisms, they are just following the rules of life, trying to thrive and reproduce and just sustain their species. That's the whole idea. And so the question now is that each organism has got to protect itself from invasion. It's as simple as that. And nature has ensured that whether you are a prey or a predator, whether you are a host or you are a pathogen, you have means of protecting yourself. It's all about who has the upper hand that survive eventually. And so anytime the body is infected, the immune system is automatically activated. So in this lesson and subsequent lessons, we'll be discussing the nature, the forms, and the mode of action of the immune system. And still on infection, what is the role of the immune system in this whole scenario? Okay, so like I said earlier on, you've got the infection at one extreme and then the disease condition, meaning that the organism has weighed down the immune system. Between the two extremes, infection and disease, you've got the incubation period, which can take days or weeks or years. For example, HIV can be latent, okay, hidden for 14 years plus, and then suddenly immune system of the person crashes, and then the virus begin to take the upper hand. Tuberculosis also, okay, that bacterium can also be latent. So latency is common to TB infection and HIV infection. But the idea is that the immune system is to ensure that infections of that interstitial fluid or the tissues or the blood, okay, the infections do not result in what disease condition that you have entered, but we will not let you have your way. Okay, you've entered. So sometimes the skin is breached. The keratinized human skin, as tough as the skin is, it can be breached. Like I said, there are openings and there are organisms that even dare to drill through the skin to enter. So the whole idea about the immune system is to ensure that the immune system, the body is always on top. Like somebody can say, you're on top of the game. The immune system has to be ready, efficient enough, and be proactive, spontaneous to respond to any threat to the health of the host organism. Now let's begin to discuss immune response. I said at the beginning of this lesson, the immune response is the reaction of the immune system. Now I want to avoid this in an examination. Avoid the use of the word body. The body has about 11 systems. Okay, the muscular, the urinary, the excretory. You've got the muscular, and then you got digestive. So when you say is the response of the body, please, it's not the body. Okay, it's the immune system that is involved. So in that body, there's a system that is in charge of protecting the host body from this threat. So the immune response is about the immune system being able to respond, okay, to the invasion by the pathogen or whatever is perceived harmful. So the immune system is to protect. That is the whole idea. And what does the immune system respond to? We call them antigens. Whatsoever the immune system perceives as a potential risk is referred to as an antigen. An antigen, usually antigens on cells, you call them antigens. They are proteins or glycoproteins. If you go back to our video on cell membrane, you'll have come across this, that antigens are proteins or glycoproteins, and they have a specific shape. And so that is why there's always a complementary thing between an antigen and the receptor. That's how the immune system recognizes, because an organism has an antigen. An antigen always specifies the cell. Okay, what cell, what is the owner or the source of a cell. So every cell is identified or specified by the antigen on its surface membrane. So several substances can be qualified as antigens. So many of them, important ingredients, does whatever activate your immune response to make it to react the way it's. Even allergy is part of immune response, because your body is having to respond to what is uncomfortable to you as a person. To others it may be normal, but to you it's not favorable, it's not conducive, you aren't enjoying it whatsoever. And so the immune system must be able to identify what is the nature of the threat. Of course, there are times, and we're going to see subsequently, that there's no time to begin to consider or understand what is the nature of the threat. We are going to see that later, the forms of the immune response later. Let's look at the structure of the immune system. Every part of the body has a structure. If you talk about your excretory system, you've got to talk about your kidneys and other structure. If you're talking about your nervous system, you've got the oligodendrocytes, okay, and then you've got the neurons. And so there's a structure. What are those parts of the body that are working together to protect the body from disease if there's an infection, there's an invasion rather? So the lymphatic system is part of it. The lymph, if we go back to what we discussed under lymph is tissue fluid, excess tissue fluid that did not return to the capillaries. Remember, when blood gets to capillary, there's a filtration that occurs, and that filtration produces a fluid called tissue fluid. You can also call it extracellular fluid. You can also call it interstitial fluid. And so the system of those tiny vessels that pervade the different parts of the body, that's what you have. So you have an aspect of immune system that is the lymphatic system, and it's made up of a network of vessels called lymphatic vessels. And in these vessels, you've got lymphocytes, T cells and B cells. We are going to see this ones also in details. These lymphocytes are being carried in the lymph. So in the lymphatic system, you've got lymphatic vessels, through which a fluid called lymph flows, and then the lymph carries cells. So three things: lymphatic vessels, lymphatic, okay, one lymphatic vessel, and you've got lymphocytes, and you've got the lymph. The lymph is a fluid that transports cells called lymphocytes through vessels called lymphatic vessels. Let me say it again. Now you've got one lymph, a fluid flowing through vessels called lymphatic vessels, and the fluid lymph now it transports cells called lymphocytes. Okay. Now, of course, the immune system has, like I said previously, the skin, which is the largest structure, the largest organ of the immune system, because it covers a large expanse of the body from head to your toe. And you've got the bone marrow also, which is the source of all the cells of the immune system. And still on the immune system, we've got these structures to discuss. Now let's look at this, because the immune system is made up of organs, cells, tissues, molecules. I mean, when you say something a system, for you, what you have done in elementary biology, a system is made up of tissues, and tissues are made up of cells. So there are many composite things that you have in the concept of immune system, and so there are organs and cells and tissues. So many things are working together, and you've got a particular important part called the lymphoid organs. Okay, still the word lymph shows up again, and you got the primary lymphoid organs, okay, which are sites where you have the blood cells being produced at, and where they multiply and proliferate. And then you got the secondary. We see some, again, this it will show up again in some slides later in this particular lesson. And then you've got all the different types of cells. So in the immune system, you've got cells, structures, you've got molecules, you've got different things working together. And a very important part of the immune system is the thymus gland. The thymus gland is important because it is where the T cell, when we get to specific immune response, we will see cells called T. That T can remind you of the word thymus. So the thymus gland is located very close to the heart. The thymus gland is that location where cells called T cells mature. You see the word train in quotes there. They are being trained in quotes. They are being prepared for efficient immune response, because the T cells control the whole immune system. They control every other cell. They control the cytotoxic T cells. They control the B cells also. And so when there's an infection, you mobilize blood cells from the bone marrow. Bone marrow produces immature cells called stem cells. Let me say that again. The cells from the bone marrow, they are not yet mature. You call them stem cells. Stem cells are cells that have not yet differentiated or matured into specific cells. So the bone marrow cells, there are tissues in the bone marrow that will produce red blood cells, some will produce white blood cells. Even there are different types of white blood cells. And so these are things that we have to note. We are talking about parts or structures of the immune system. Who are those working together in that system? And then still back to the lymphatic system, we also have lymph nodes. So if you want to, you can take your pen and begin to write things that have lymph in their name. We talk about lymphatic vessels 1, we talk about lymphocytes 2, talk about the lymph as a fluid. Now we are talking about lymph nodes. A node is a swelling. There are parts of the body, you're going to talk about that. There's parts of the body called the lymph nodes, like around your neck, your groin, under your armpit, where you have a concentration of cells that help to produce and store. Okay, they store white blood cells, and their activities go on there. We'll see details as we go on. And then lymph is formed from fluid. Like I said, when you filter plasma through capillary walls, you produce tissue fluid. Tissue fluid is what supplies cells with beneficial products, substances like oxygen, glucose, and the rest. But excess tissue fluid is supposed to return to the capillaries, but oftentimes not all the tissue fluid you filter returns. The excess tissue fluid is what is channeled into lymphatic vessels to transport lymphocytes to where there's an infection or a threat to the body. So we are discussing the lymphatic system now. Okay, now the first thing to realize is that these vessels, they connect together to form what is called a thoracic duct. Now, never forget that a thoracic duct is made up of several lymphatic vessels. Okay, those tiny vessels join together to form a thoracic duct, which is the largest part of the lymphatic system, the largest vessel. And then this vessel is the largest lymphatic vessel, not largest in the body, but largest lymphatic vessel. Okay, so it's the largest vessel of the lymphatic system, and then it connects. So when all your lymph from different parts of the body, the lymph, okay, because blood is blood, when you filtered, you produce tissue fluid, which was meant to return. Now let's say you got 97% of tissue fluid returning, the 5% that did not return must still get mixed together with 97% to make it blood. Let me say that again. You can't separate blood. The entire volume of blood flows through the whole system. Of course, if you remember your physics, when current is entering into a circuit, okay, depending on the resistor of the resistance of that particular appliance or gadget in that circuit, that determines how much current flows through that channel. So when you look at your V is equal to IR, the resistance determines how much current flows through a particular gadget. So depending on which part of the body, you have got all kinds. So the lymph flows carrying lymphocytes to different parts of the body. But blood, eventually, the lymph must rejoin the tissue fluid. Everything must become blood again. So how is lymph returned? Remember, lymph was excess tissue fluid. You filter, you produce tissue fluid. Now, how does excess tissue fluid, how does this lymph return to the circulatory system? Very simple. It's emptied, okay? Lymph is emptied in the lymphatic vessel into a vessel in the neck called the subclavian vein. Now, that name is very important. That vein is what connects with the vessel coming to the heart, the superior vena cava. So you got the subclavian vein in the neck region connecting with the superior, or what you call anterior vena cava, to empty into the right auricle eventually. So blood coming from the inferior vena cava, the rest of the body, will rejoin the one coming from the head and neck region. So lymph rejoins blood by being emptied into subclavian vein in the neck region, and that connects with the superior or anterior vena cava, as you can also call it. And then, so the two veins that return blood to the heart are the superior vena cava from the head and neck region, and the inferior vena cava from the rest of the body. Still on the lymphatic system, lymph transports all kinds of things. I mean, if you remember your transport system, while glucose and amino acids as end product of carbohydrate and protein digestion respectively are transported through blood directly, because fatty acids are insoluble in water, they are first converted to fat globules, which are transported through lymphatic vessels. So lymph also contains fats. Very important. Lymph is very important in transportation of fats. So fatty acids. So if you eat yam and egg, your yam is starch, is broken down to glucose. The egg is a protein broken down to amino acids. Those two, because they are soluble in water, they will be transported through blood in the hepatic portal vein to the liver. But fatty acids are going to slow down blood flow because they are not soluble. So they are first converted to fat globules, which are transported through lymphatic vessel in convenient form before they rejoin the blood eventually. So lymph is very important because apart from transporting white blood cells, it also transports a variety of substances, like I said in my explanation. Now let's look at the nature of the immune response. What does it look like? What's the form? Now, if immune response involves mobilizing all kinds of things, everything, just like saying that there is a threat to a nation or state, and then you mobilize your military, that's the ground, your navy, okay, then you got the air force, so your navy from the sea will attack the enemy, the air force from the aerial, okay, position. So imagine mobilizing these three forces, the aerial, the ground, and the sea, for example, to weaken the opposition. And so when you talk about immune response, it involves mobilizing cellular, physiological, physical, structural, chemical, everything that will weaken the organism. That's what it's all about. Like we said earlier on, the skin is the most effective barrier, but when it is compromised, the immune system becomes activated. So you have the means, you have the part of the immune response referred to as physiology. Physiology talks about the way a process is carried out. So we got the, when you talk about digestion, you can talk about the physiology of digestion of this or that. So the way a process is done in detail is what you call its physiology. So sweating is part of physiology when blood is brought through the sweat duct to the skin and things like that. So you have blood coming up, fluid coming from the capillaries and entering the sweat duct and then going out as sweat. The mucus production is a process also involving the mucus linings of the different parts of the body. We start in subsequent slides, and then phagocytosis is a process whereby a cell engulfs an unwanted substance. Still on the nature of the immune response, you've got chemicals. Okay, chemical defenses involve a variety of chemicals. So you've got complement proteins, okay, which also label the complement proteins label an enemy cell like as a target for destruction by macrophages. And then you've got HCl. The pH of HCl is 2.2. That hydrolyzes, it kills some bacteria in cells, and it makes the environment favorable for the enzyme, the protein enzymes pepsin and renin to function. Of course, pepsin is an enzyme, but renin, I remember I taught that in that lesson called digestion. Renin is not an enzyme. It only coagulates milk protein. So, but pepsin is the enzyme. Renin is not an enzyme. It doesn't have any enzyme action. The lysozyme also entails cytokines. These are chemicals in the immune system. Then you've got cellular defense. Remember we said in immune response you are using everything you know, everything you have in your arsenal. It's like a war, a battle between your immune system and the invading microorganism. And then you have these cells. So you've got phagocytes, macrophages, neutrophils. Dendritic cells also have phagocytic role. Mast cells, basophils. These are cells that can be mobilized when there's a threat to the body. And then let's look at physical barrier. Of course, the skin comes first here. The outer, the uncompromised, the undamaged human skin is thick enough to protect. Okay, when you sweat, the sweat is salty. That can sterilize or kill some microorganism. You've got many substances in sweat. Your cornea, that's the layer outside the eye. That's also important. When you shed tears, there are chemicals like lysozyme in your tears. Lysozyme has microbial actions. It can kill. So that's antimicrobial. Okay, and then of course when you sterilize means that you are killing. So it got antimicrobial action. Talking about lysozyme, of course not that much, but at least it can weaken. And then you've got macrophages, you've got dendritic cells. Now all of these are contained in the cornea. So remember we are talking about physical barrier. So in that part of the body, what do you have there? So there's a location, that's the physical. What is not chemical in nature is tangible, you can see it and you can describe its location. And then of course, very important, all linings into the body are lined by mucosa layer. Mucosa talks about being able to produce mucus. So the respiratory, the gastrointestinal, which is concerned with food, and then your genital urinary or genital. Okay, so all of this, what the lining does is it's got mucous glands that secrete mucus. What's the mucus? Mucus is made up of protein called mucin added to carbohydrate chain and water, and then so you can imagine, so mucus is very rich, so microorganisms can actually breed inside mucus. You got water, you got protein, you got carbohydrate. That's food. Because so you and I, it looks irritating, but to those microorganisms, even though you trap them, so mucus can trapping microorganisms with mucus does not mean that you have killed them. What you have done is to immobilize, meaning it will not spread. So everywhere there's mucus being sticky can trap microorganisms from spreading. And then of course mucus contains some small amount of lysozyme, lactoferrin, and immunoglobulin A. So immunoglobulin is a kind of antibody. In subsequent lessons under specific immune response, we are going to be talking about the function and the role of antibodies in immune system. Let's have a closer look of lymphoid organs. We've already talked about the lymphatic system, but since we are talking about the components of the immune response, okay, what the system looks like, you've got some organs called lymphoid organs. They can be divided into primary lymphoid organs, which are central. Now, what are these? The primary lymphoid organs are where the lymphocytes are bathed, meaning where they are being produced at, and where they begin to multiply. Not where they mature naturally, but at least you are producing them in large quantity. So it's like a source. That's why it's primary, it's central. So all cells of the immune system emanates from these regions. And so this location is for the sake of production and production. And you've got two key organs like that. The thymus gland we said earlier on, that's close to the heart, the bone marrow, all the bones that you have, their marrows, so your arms, your limbs, your sacrum, all of these, there are different parts of the body where blood is being produced at. And still on lymphoid organs, you've got the secondary. As the secondary organs, the lymphoid organs are where these cells mature and where they begin to encounter the antigens of the organism that they have to destroy. And so you've got the spleen, the tonsils, the lymph nodes, the cutaneous, which is the skin, and the mucosal immune part of the immune system. So all of these are secondary. In other words, when the cells have been produced at the primary or the central, they are transported to these regions to mature, and here they encounter the microorganism and they begin to be effective when it comes to this. That's why they become what you call the effector cells. So your mature T cells, mature B cells are effector cells. When B cells are transformed into plasma cells, the plasma cells are examples of effector cells. These are the cells that will eventually effect the destruction of the pathogen. So as we round off, look at this diagram, trying to situate and locate the different part of the immune system. So you've got the lymph nodes located in different parts. You've got the tonsils, very important, at the back of your mouth. And we are going to see all of these when we get to the different types of the immune response in subsequent lessons. So look at this last slide for this particular lesson. You will see the different regions, okay, your lines of defense. These are the different parts of the body that help us to protect us from the invading microorganism. And so look at this slide and the previous slide, and then go over these slides, and then so you can understand this diagram when you get to subsequent lessons. So as we this lesson, like I always say, if you've got questions, comments, observations, if you've got topics you want us to treat for your own interest as you prepare for that examination, get in touch with me through WhatsApp, email, Instagram, YouTube. As I wish you success, no matter the part of the world you are from. My thank you is on the lower part of the screen there. You got the gracias, you got the thank you. Whatever your language, thank you for listening, and please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let these videos go viral. If you are enjoying our lessons, benefiting from them, and they are helping you to build your confidence towards your exam, we will want to hear from you. Your comment will encourage us. We too need to be encouraged. We need to be motivated to do more. So thank you for listening to this lesson. See you in lesson 2. Bye.